before I get into today's review, which is Scarlet by Marissa Meyer, I'm going to point out my giant margarita. I feel like it's been a while since I pulled out the margaritas. I just need to tell you this because it might have an effect on my ability to review today. And that is, I got kicked out of my book club today. Which, it's not totally unexpected, if I'm going to be honest. And it's actually something I had been thinking about doing myself, just voluntarily leaving. But at the same time, it makes me question my life. The reason, for anybody who's followed my channel, is not going to be that surprising. Essentially, I got kicked out for voicing my opinions, for saying things that people don't really want to hear. And that's what I do here, is I talk about books, the good, the bad. I talk about the craft. I talk about the content. I talk about my opinions. And I guess not all book clubs are open to that. What makes me most sad about the situation is it was actually a good book club. The leader, she works really hard to make it a good book club. I'm uncertain as to the reasoning behind the books that she assigns. My initial thought was it was non-biased. But then sometimes I got the feeling that she was assigning things based off personal preference. In any case, I didn't like most of the books that I read. I think out of maybe the 10 or 12 that I had to read, I only liked 2. And as time progressed, I got the feeling she didn't like me very much. And we'd had a conversation about something because she would get authors to come to these events, to come to our meetings, which was really, really great. So she wanted us to send questions, and I sent mine, and she didn't like them. They didn't fall within the parameters of what she prefers to give to the authors. And from that point on, I got the sense that she didn't like the way that I come at my books, like the way that I form my opinions or the opinions that I have. Like, she, I think, prefers readers, not writers. She likes people to come in with a reader mindset rather than a writer mindset. From that point on, I felt like she got progressively more antagonistic towards me. And in the last couple meetings, for me, it was really obvious. I was trying to determine if I was just being sensitive or if she was truly being snippy towards me, and just anytime I would say something that she didn't like, if it was really her trying to come at me in the opposite direction by trying to negate what I had to say, it wasn't just in my head. It was definitely her feeling like she didn't want me in the group anymore. And so then, yeah, she told me that I was too negative. I have never in my life been told I'm too negative. I can see why she'd say that, because if I don't like something, I say it. But I also would try to talk about things I did like. It's not like I came out of the gate. I mean, yes, I would come out of the gate and be like, I didn't really like this book. But I didn't come out the gate and lambast a book, okay? I wasn't like, I hated this book and it sucked for this and this and this and this. I would say, I just didn't get it, or I didn't understand it, or it just wasn't for me. I wasn't trying to say my word was law, but I don't think she's ever encountered anybody that way, and that's fine. It's okay if we don't get along, it's okay, but I didn't like the way she handled the situation. I didn't like the way she made it feel like it was my fault for having an opinion. All of that to say, I'm going to try really hard to give you guys a good review, but it hurt my pride, because if I don't know how to look at a book, then I'm in the completely wrong industry. And it hurt my feelings, and it made me angry that she made it my fault. She wasn't going to take any blame because it was her book club. Ergo, she's going to make an executive decision. I wanted to ask her, does anybody agree with you? Like, am I making people uncomfortable? But she made up her mind, and I was out. And I was just like, fine. Obviously, I was ready to leave anyways because I wasn't enjoying any of the books that she was assigning. But I was like, am I out because of you, or am I out because of everybody? I would prefer you to say you're not a good fit because you are bringing down the entire book club, rather than it came across as, that's not what I want for my book club, therefore you need to leave. Because my thought was, a book club is where you discuss a book. You discuss your feelings. You discuss what the book is about. You discuss why it was good, why it was bad. And if it's because I'm thinking of it in a writer's mindset of, I didn't think that they had good characterization or good plot, or I thought it was boring for this or that or the other, like, I think that should be allowed. So there we go. I'm very glad I had a margarita reserve, because it's because as much as I'm glad to be out of that situation, I wish at least I could have given another chance. You know, her been like, look, this, and this, and you've been warned, and, you know, if you don't think you can do it this way, then maybe you should leave, rather than you're too negative, and I think it best if you leave. Today is Scarlet, which is book 2 of the Lunar Chronicles. Yesterday, I reviewed Cinder, and let me take a drink. Let me just, and my head's really itchy, so I don't know what's wrong with me today, but everything is wrong. I'm gonna take a drink and then I'm gonna get into it, okay? Scarlet. Again, I have not actually opened this one either. I listened to it on audiobook. I thought it was fantastic. Although, I will say, as much as I enjoy the audiobook, one of the characters is a guy named Kai. He is the Emperor of the Eastern Commonwealth. However, his full name is Kaito. And I don't remember how the narrator was pronouncing it in Cinder, but in this book, she pronounced his name Kai. But then anytime she would pronounce, like, if his name was spelled out, Emperor Kaito, she would call him Emperor Kato. And it bothered me. It reminded me of Harry Potter, where Voldemort is French. Ergo, you do not pronounce the T on the end. I don't know how long it took people to catch on to this, or like with Hermione, people couldn't pronounce her name, so Rowling put that in so that people could figure it out. So I don't know if it was Rowling eventually being like, look, it's not Voldemort, it's Voldemort. But at the beginning of the series, the narrator has all the characters say Voldemort, and then he switches to Voldemort. And I think he may or may not switch back to Voldemort in the end, but it reminded me of that, where it's like, do you not know how to pronounce the name? And is Meyer not involved in any of this process in trying to inform the narrator as to how to pronounce certain things? I don't know, but that was one thing that bothered me, because I was like, if his name is Kato, why is his nickname Kai? That's just me being type A. That is just me being persnickety and being negative, okay? So Scarlet picks up immediately after Cinder, and if you can't tell, Scarlet is Little Red Riding Hood. And we are introduced to Scarlet because in Cinder, we learn that Cinder is the long-lost Princess Celine, and that the rumors about her escape from Queen Levana's attempted murder are linked to an Air Force pilot named Michelle Benoit. Michelle Benoit is Scarlet's grandmother, and so we pick up in Scarlet with her grandmother having gone missing, and she's an eccentric woman, and so Scarlet's trying to find her. She's trying to get the police involved. She's trying to get her community involved. But because her grandmother has rubbed people the wrong way, I have personal experience with this now. Nobody really wants to help, so she's just declared gone. Like, she just up and left of her own volition. And so Scarlet, they live on a farm, and she is taking vegetables to one of the local pubs, where she is informed by one of her friends, who is a barmaid, about this guy, the fighter, who is now back. Like, he's been around, and he's at a table, and so now Scarlet actually gets to see him. His name's Wolf. It turns out they need an extra hand at this pub. So she goes to serve Wolf or to clear away his plate, and he's like, I've never had a vegetable. So they bond over this. Then she ends up going to watch him in a fight because he's a street fighter. Then when she goes home, she finds that her dad, her bum of a father who abandoned her at her grandmother's 10 years earlier, tearing apart the house. Apparently he had been abducted and tortured right in front of her grandmother, and he's like, they need me to find something so that basically they will let me live. And he's super angry at the grandmother for letting all of this happen right in front of her face without trying to stop it. He reveals to her that one of the captors had a tattoo, and she recognizes that this is a tattoo that Wolf had. So then she goes after Wolf, and she's all angry with him, and he's like, look, I'm just part of a wolf pack. I'm part of a gang. So it wasn't me, but it could have been someone that I'm involved with. So then they go on this journey to find her grandmother. They go to Paris in order to go to his wolf pack and get information as to where her grandmother is. And we also get chapters of Cinder interspersed so that we see what she's doing, because in the end of Cinder, she had been in jail. Dr. Erlon, who, there's backstory to him, anyways, he's a good guy, and he is trying to find a cure for this disease called leishmaniasis that is ravaging the entire world. And so he's like, all right, so I'm going to give you, because she's a cyborg, I'm going to give you a new foot, I'm going to give you a new hand, and then I'm going to go to Africa where leishmaniasis started, and you got to find your way out of jail. And so that is what she is doing. So find your way out of jail, come find me in Africa. So that is her goal. Along the way meets another prisoner called Carswell Thorne, who is very roguish. He's much the rake, and he's in jail for a myriad of reasons, but he owns a ship. And so she's like, I'm gonna take you with me, and we're gonna use your ship to escape and to go find Dr. Erlon. So with Scarlet, you don't really know if you should trust Wolf or not. They end up forming a romance that, plainly put, I thought happened a little too quickly. I mean, I get it. Like, romances can happen right away. But because of their relationship and the animosity between the two, I thought it was a little implausible that 2 to 3 days in, she's falling in love with him and making out with him as a stowaway on a train. One thing I did like about Wolf, because even though you don't really know what to think about him, that's a good thing, because you're constantly questioning why Scarlet chooses to put so much faith in him. They get to Paris, and they get to his wolf pack's den, and it turns out that he had basically been a double agent. Like, when they had been on their initial train to Paris, she had met this guy named Ran, and then she gets back to her room, and Wolf is like, you smell. And then the next thing they know, the train is being stopped, and everybody is being blood tested, and the theory is that somebody on the train has leishmaniasis. For some reason, Scarlet is like, we gotta get off this train. So she and Wolf get off the train, and they're trying to make it to Paris on foot. They run into Ran again, and then Wolf and Ran get into a brawl, and it turns out they're not only Wolf brothers, but they're actual brothers. And I enjoyed this part too, because you think Wolf is on Scarlet's side, like he's truly reformed, and his animosity towards Ran seems legit. Like, he almost kills Ran, and if Scarlet hadn't stepped in, he would have done. But then when you get to the hideout, or their little den, and he turns Scarlet in, you're like, oh my gosh, it was all an act. And so, yeah, Scarlet, they lock her away. And one thing that, if you didn't see my Cinder review, you need to go back and watch it, because it gives you a lot of background. But one thing that the Lunars can do, let me take another drink. because there's two factions in this book, Earthens and Lunars. They're at odds. Cinder is the missing lunar princess, but Queen Levana is a ruthless lunar queen who rules by force. And what the Lunars can do is they have this gift in which they can manipulate a person's bioelectricity, and they can cast a glamour, which essentially means they can make people do and think and feel whatever they want. All of these wolf packs, actually I'm getting a little ahead of myself because I've only mentioned one, but there's a bunch of wolf packs because what Queen Levana is trying to do is she's trying to conquer the entire solar system. She wants to be in charge, and so she's raising up this army of genetically enhanced men in the form of wolves. But they are all controlled by something called a thaumaturge, which I guess is just an incredibly powerful lunar. So when Scarlet is brought to her cell, she thinks she is being brought to see her grandmère, only it turns out that the thaumaturge, JL, is manipulating her into thinking that Ran, who somehow got to Paris ahead of them and completely healed from all of his wounds, JL is making Scarlet think that Ran is her grandmother. And then we get this thing, because there's quite a few viewpoints, and that's one thing that I am not completely sold on, is the necessity for some of the viewpoints, because they're one-offs. I'm not really going to go into that because I'm tired of being negative. But we learn that grandmère, even though she's earthen, because only Lunars have the ability to cast glamours. Sometimes Lunars are what are called a shell, which means that they can't cast a glamour. But all Earthens are shells, essentially. None of them can resist a glamour or cast a glamour. And so we learn that even though grandmère is earthen, she can resist the glamour. And eventually it's revealed that the same surgery that had been performed on Cinder to make her into a cyborg and to kind of hide her from Queen Levana or anybody who might be searching for her was installing this chip of some sort that can dampen her lunar ability and prevent her from being influenced by the glamour. So that surgery had also been performed on Marissa Benoit. And then JL, in performing this little stunt on Scarlet, is I don't know why her grandmother can resist us, but she's putty in my hands. Wolf comes in at some point and forces her to kiss him, and he slips another chip into her mouth, and he tells her, basically, you can escape, but don't do it at this certain point in time. And during that certain point in time, all of the wolf packs that had been brought to Earth were going to ravage the cities that they were in. So it caused 16,000 earthen deaths, something like that, only by 200 or 300 of these wolfmen. So she escapes to find her grandmother. And again, now I'm oh, is this really her grandmother this time? Or is it all still a trick? Because we don't know. Can we trust Wolf? Can we trust anybody? It turns out it really is her grandmother. And her grandmother reveals to her the truth behind who Cinder or Princess Celine is. Because all this time, everybody has been afraid of the escaped cyborg Cinder. And even though for some reason Scarlet felt empathy towards her and was why are we judging her? She's only a kid. So she already had that going for her, but now her grandmother's look, she's important. You need to go find her. And then Ran shows up, and the grandmother goads him into killing her because she's extremely weak anyways. They'd been torturing her and all that good stuff. Scarlet runs away and is saved by Wolf. But all this time, the wolfmen had been under control of their thaumaturges. So he was Wolf, but he wasn't Wolf. And what Meyer does to explain it is the thaumaturges can bring out the wolf-enhanced qualities. However, those wolf-enhanced qualities also mean that Wolf's natural instinct would be to protect his alpha mate. And so even though he wasn't really in his right mind and he could have hurt her, he saved her and he didn't hurt her because she was his alpha mate. Again, that was something that I had a hard time swallowing because I didn't think that the romance was fully fleshed out enough by this point. But whatever, I'm not going to be negative. They are rescued by Cinder and Carswell because somehow they had located Scarlet. This big battle breaks out because JL discovers them and has sicked his wolf pack on them. And Cinder is able to control one of the wolves and gets him to help her get people on board. And this apparently is incredibly impressive because even the thaumaturges, they work for years upon years upon years to get these wolfmen under their control. And even then, they can only control so many at a time because something about the genetic enhancements just makes these wolfmen different from a normal person. The gang escapes, and now they are kind of off in space. And we basically end there with Wolf saying, if you truly are Princess Celine, then you are my queen and you get my allegiance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to help you practice. Because if you are that good, after only having discovered your gift 5 days ago, then yes, Queen Levana has something to be scared of. And also through this, we have Prince Kai's view. And I didn't discuss him much in Cinder just because I didn't really have much to say. And I still don't have much to say, but I like his character because Cinder, not only is she a cyborg, but she's also Lunar, which are like the two biggest strikes any creature, any being could have against them. And he constantly is like, I know that I should hate her, but I don't. And so I enjoyed that he wasn't a stereotype, that he wasn't just like, oh, like I need to get rid of her. Like he questioned the system. And he's also questioned Levana. And what he does is, in order to stop these wolf attacks, he finally agrees to marry her. And then Cinder, upon hearing this, is freaking out. And at first I'm like, oh my gosh, are we freaking out because we're in love with him? I liked how it turned out into more of a, you were such an idiot. I risked my life to ward you against what would happen if you married him, and now look what you're doing. I enjoyed seeing Prince Kai because it kept that threat of Queen Levana alive. There, if you saw my review of Colleen Oakes's Seas, which is a Peter Pan retelling, so I love retellings. Peter Pan is kind of a non-entity, and so I enjoyed how we had a villain, because in her Wendy Darling series, he's the villain. I enjoyed seeing how we could be afraid of him without actually seeing him present. And so I could have bought not having Kai's point of view and still having that threat of Levana, because Cinder is constantly thinking about her. But by including Kai's point of view, you see the active presence of her and the way that he's having to battle things. And he's a main character, so we got to keep him in there somewhere. Even though I feel like by the end of this series, we're going to have so many points of view, I'm not going to know what to do with myself. Yeah, this book, Scarlet, was pretty good. I don't think I liked it as much as Cinder because I was very confused by Scarlet. I enjoy a strong female lead. And initially, Scarlet tells it like it is. She has no problem holding her tongue, which I can relate to. And apparently, it will get me into trouble as well. And so even though I connected with her initially because of that, I preferred Cinder because she was a little bit of the strong silent type, where she knew what needed to be done. She wasn't as confident as Scarlet, and she wasn't as always sure of herself as Scarlet, but she still got things done. and in a very reasonable way. Whereas with Scarlet, the problem is that she's brought to us as this take no prisoners kind of character. Yet she meets Wolf and she has her reservations, but then she puts a whole lot of trust and faith in him and then falls in love with him. I don't even know why. Like, I get it. They're in a confined space. They're in a very tense situation. Emotions run high. I think he's kind of hot or something. But I don't know what happened for him to gain her trust to the point that she could change her mind so quickly about him. As I said, I like him because you don't really know if you can trust him or not. But at the same time, as a character, like as a reader, I should be questioning whether or not I should trust him. For Scarlet, I feel like she needs to choose a side, and then we have an evolution. And it just wasn't executed the way that I thought it should be in order to make it believable. And then as for Wolf, as much as I liked how I didn't know what to think of him, in the end, I still never quite understood where he stood. When we meet him, he says, I'm trying to start a new life. And then this is when he's like, can I come work on your farm? And then things happen and now they're off to Paris. And then we run into Ran, and it's like Wolf, who's shared some of his life with her. You know, they're connecting. So then we meet Ran, and we're like, for sure, Wolf has changed his ways, only to get to the opera house where his pack is staying, and for him to automatically turn her over, only for them to turn around and give her a way out, and then to rescue her, but then potentially almost murder her. I do understand that JL had a lot to do with that. I'm not sure how large of a scope he has. Like, Queen Levana can control hundreds at a time, but I think it's still within a certain purview, like, you know, in her immediate vicinity. So I don't know how far away Wolf can get before JL no longer has control over him. So I can understand how once he got back within JL's presence, JL could manipulate him again. But I kind of, in going along with that Red Riding Hood and the Wolf tricking Red Riding Hood, I wanted to be convinced that Wolf was pretending, and then had a change of heart because, I guess, after or maybe around the time that they reach Paris and he's gonna turn her over, he starts to think about things and reconsider what he's doing. But his motivations felt a little, or his conviction felt a little wishy-washy for me. Because, as I said, the dad says, my captor had a tattoo. So Scarlet's like, oh my gosh, it is totally Wolf, and he lied to me. What I was hoping would be the case is that, because then, you know, she's, when she confronts Wolf, and Wolf is like, this is how long I've been on the street fighting. And she's like, well, actually my grandmother disappeared before any of that happened, so obviously his story is true. I would have loved for Wolf have been setting something up, like establishing his innocence, only to learn that he didn't have to be involved with the plan to be involved with the plan. Like, there can be multiple plans in place, and the multiple plans were, one faction abducts the grandmother, another faction abducts the dad, and then Wolf's mission is to get information out of Scarlet. So it's like, he could be involved without being involved. And so I wanted to be like, he's tricking her. He is pretending to be something he's not so he can hit his end game, only for us to realize he wasn't actually a good guy, only for us to think, well, maybe he can be a good guy. You know, he's just unfortunate circumstances. So I liked him, but I didn't like him. I thought he could have been stronger. All of that said, Scarlet wasn't a bad book. just like Cinder, it was quick, it was fun, it was imaginative. I still enjoy Meyer's take on these fairy tales. And I know there's a whole lot about Scarlet that I am skipping over, but I just don't have it in me today. This is not my best review, I will admit that. However, I hope that doesn't deter you from watching more, for sticking with me, for liking and subscribing and commenting, and I guess along the lines of what recently happened to me. If you've watched my videos, I'd love to know your feedback about what I say. Am I negative? Or do you think I have a good point? Or, when I talk about a book that I really don't like, how harsh am I really? I actually did get some feedback for my own book, and in many ways, characters are a reflection of ourselves. And this girl just kept saying, wow, she's rude. She's rude. So I'm like, am I rude and negative? I thought I was likable. I don't know. Anyways, thank you for sticking with me. If you have any questions about Scarlet, don't hesitate to ask, and I'll see you tomorrow for Cress. Bye. And don't forget my Cinder giveaway. I have never read this book before. I was gifted with the entire set, and so I was like, why do I need 2 copies of Cinder? Although as soon as I give this away, I'm gonna wish I had it back, because I enjoy writing in my copies and then having like a pretty copy that I can lend out. But yes, I'm giving away Cinder. All you gotta do this entire week is just like, subscribe, comment. Let me know what your favorite retellings are, what's your favorite book in the Lunar Chronicles, and you'll be in the drawing. Easy peasy, mac and squeezy, okay? Bye.